Valorant. Riot's answer to CSGO and Overwatch. How is it? Hey, what's going on, geeks? Max is here, and welcome to my first impressions of Valorant. If you follow me over on Instagram, you'll probably have seen my post where I showcase the fact that I got into the alpha, or beta, or whatever this is, for Valorant. And I've had the opportunity to play the game, and will keep playing for the next couple months that the beta is active. And thankfully the game is free, so I'm not going to have to pay $60 when it comes out. But, is it fun? What do I think about it? Coming from a background of playing Counter-Strike for a while, what does this mean for me? Well, I must say, I'm impressed. Now, I know that the game has had some controversy recently with the anti-cheat supposedly watching your search history and just paying attention to your computer activity, but again, Riot's come out and said that that's not the case. So I don't really know what's going on with that, so we'll just see what's going on with that as that continues on. But the game itself is a lot of fun. It's competitive like CSGO. It's 5v5 like CSGO competitive. It features a class-based system like TF2 or Overwatch, and has the same kind of charm with abilities that you'd expect from a Riot game, as well as characters alongside characters from things like Overwatch or TF2. It's legitimately a fun game. So the first match I ever jumped into, it was quiet. You know, the game was, it's slower paced. It is like Counter-Strike, where you are progressing at a much slower pace. That's the point. You're slower, you're supposed to be more tactical, and play it smart. Communication is important. Game sense is important. Understanding your own abilities as well as your opponent's abilities are both important components in playing the game and playing it effectively, as well as understanding of your weapons. Because, again, your weapons are your primary tools of success. If you want to play well, you got to understand how to use them properly. And there is a good variety of firearms to choose from in Valorant, from pistols to machine pistols, shotguns, LMGs, assault rifles, some machine guns, auto shotguns, and sniper rifles. It's a diverse cast of characters and weapons. And it's still, as you can hear in the background, saying, it's a fun game. I like it. It does remind me a lot of CSGO, where understanding your weapon is a key component of success, as well as the teamwork side. The teamwork kind of functions sort of like Overwatch in a way, because you do have an actual support role where there's a healer who can use an ultimate ability to resurrect teammates. And really, when you put it into perspective, you really get to understand how overpowered the idea of resurrection in a shooter is. However, we'll talk more about that eventually. But overall, let's talk about some things that you, as a beginning player, will notice. Firstly, the graphics. Now, this is a complaint I've been seeing a lot of recently for some reason, where it's coming from people who don't really understand the intention behind the graphical design. Where people say that the graphics are trash, and that they don't really look good, and that if anyone expects to play a game in 2020, that game has to be very flashy and look good, 4K, Call of Duty style. When in reality, that's not always the case on how to make a good game. If you judge a game entirely by how it looks, then, well, I mean, if that's what you like, that's what you like. But you're also going to miss out on a lot of great games. If you look at games like Minecraft or Terraria, both of them are regarded as gaming masterpieces. Yet they don't really look too graphically appeasing. Their art styles are fine, but they're both incredibly fun games. So, and with this, it's sort of cartoony like TF2 or Overwatch, but in a different way. Here's some footage of Overwatch from a while ago. If you'll notice here, Overwatch is very cartoony, right? But there's also a lot of detail in the map. The billboards here on Numbani getting in the way. The site itself covered in trees and bushes. And overall, it's a full-on city, and that's the point of it. However, it can be cluttered. And for a game of this type, it works. But also in CSGO, while maps like Mirage are fine, some of the newer ones, like the new... oh goodness, what's it called? Are cluttered. The bomb sites are messy. There's a lot of detail and they look great. When I say messy, I refer to it in a gameplay stance, where it sacrifices gameplay for aesthetic. Where some of these maps are kind of hard to play on, but they're really nice looking. But for me to really like a game, you don't want to sacrifice gameplay for anything, because how a game plays is the most important part of a game. Because even if I'm playing a game that looks absolutely breathtaking, but it plays horribly, that does not make it a good game. It makes it a pretty game, but it's still not a good game. And I'm not trashing on CSGO entirely by saying this, because again, I still really like CSGO. But I'm just saying I'm not a big fan of what they've done with the new maps. The old ones are fine. There's still plenty of good maps in CSGO. But some of the newer ones definitely have their problems. Valorant pushes a lot of the unnecessary details to the background. So, whereas the graphics are still pretty good, and the sets and map design is both are really good, there's not a lot of clutter. There is necessary things set around the map for cover and for strategic purposes, but if you notice, it's simplistic. It's not overly complex. It's a basic setup. You have open lanes, some areas for cover, angles to watch, and of course objectives to complete. So
30 seconds left.
This works. It's an artistic choice. It's not a bad choice, and it definitely is person to person on whether or not you like it or not. But it is putting gameplay first and aesthetic second. Next up will be gameplay. And more specifically, strategy. You're going to want to work with your team closely while playing this game. Callouts are incredibly important if you want to succeed. If you want your teammates to be able to avenge your death, they have to know where your opposition is. If you want to successfully take a bomb site, you gotta let your teammates know who's on site and where. There should always be a method to the madness.
Spike
And if you're attacking, you gotta determine where you're going. Are you gonna do a split? Are you gonna rush? Who's going what angle? Are you all gonna rush one side, but one person decides to go heaven while the other person goes main? Or mid to B? You're going to have to talk it out with your team. And at the very least, communicate with one another in some way, shape, or form to deduce what you're doing. Or defending, who's taking what site. If you're both playing a site, what position are you going to play? Are you going to snipe and watch out for attackers that way? Or are you going to play Cypher, play pretty much anywhere, but also watch the main area? Communication is incredibly important, as well as teamwork. Visibility is also incredibly important. One of the most important pieces of information is knowing where your enemies are and making sure they don't know where you are, which means you have to play smart. Prevent enemy pushes by putting out smokes or area of effect abilities such as that firewall I put down, or Molotovs. Deny enemy pushes, but also keep an eye on where they are. Characters like Cypher are a great asset, where they can put down cameras, which shows where your opponents are once they get into the camera's range. But of course, the player will have to be using the camera, and the camera can be destroyed if your opponent sees it. So there's balance to it. But one of the most important things is making sure that your enemies don't know where you are. So smokes are incredibly useful. And another complaint I've seen recently is that a lot of people upset that a lot of the abilities are smokes. But each one accomplishes a different thing. Cypher's smoke ability will notify you if someone walks into it. There's a noise that plays, and it also distorts vision, where it's incredibly difficult to see in it. Whereas others, once you get into smoke, you can see pretty well inside the smoke, but you just can't see around you. Then Jet's smoke is a short temporary smoke that allows a quick crossover from a certain angle. And then both Viper and Phoenix both have a poison and firewall respectively, which can be used to deal damage as well as deny visibility. What you can see is oftentimes the most important part of a match. Providing your team with intel on where an enemy is incredibly important, as well as denying your enemy intel of where you are. It's an incredibly important part of playing the game, and it's something that every person who plays Valorant should keep in mind. Because if you fail to let your teammates know where somebody is, they could be overwhelmed without even being notified of it. Or, if you do not cover yourself well, your enemies will know where you are, and therefore understand where they should or shouldn't push if they're attacking or defending where you're going. Your intel, what you see and what you cannot see, is the most important part of Valorant. Of course, shooting and ability mastery also helps, but you cannot shoot somebody if you cannot see them. If that makes sense. So, another thing I want to talk about are ultimates. Phoenix here can do something called run it back, where he can run out with no consequence for a while, and then if he gets fatally wounded, he just teleports back to his teleport point. And if the timer runs out, he teleports back there. It encourages pushes, and encourages more aggressive behavior, However, there are still consequences for using this. While you heal back up to 100 health once you respawn, technically, you lose all your shields if you were dealt damage during your time in the Phoenix form. That's just an example of what an ultimate can do. It's balanced, but it can definitely turn the tide of a fight. Now, one complaint I do have is Viper's ultimate, where they can, where she can just literally sit on a point, pop her ultimate, and the entire bomb site is covered in a cloud and you can't do anything about it. And they can just sit in there for as long as they want with no consequence. Because Viper has a poison meter, which will eventually run out as you continue to use your poison abilities. But once you use all of it, you have to wait for it to recharge. But it never runs out if Viper is in her Poison Cloud ultimate. So again, she can just hold that there forever and face no consequences. Your main goal at that point is to find her quickly and kill her. I think it's a very overpowered ability that needs to be fixed, because I've played several times where this has happened and no one wants to push it. It's really obnoxious, and I really hope it gets fixed or patched or something. But it's definitely fun. It's definitely challenging, and it definitely keeps you on your toes. It's a very competitive game, and I love it to death. And I'm looking forward to playing more of it and sharing more of it with you guys. And you better believe I'll be making more videos talking about it in more detail and about certain aspects of the game. But this is just a basic bare bones first impressions about what I think about the game. And I hope you enjoyed it, guys. Again, definitely expect more videos on the game in the future. Anyway, guys, thanks for watching, and as always, Max the Beast is out.